Okay, so as promised, here's my video. The anniversary of 9/11, of course, the fucking crackpots are out full force again. Who would have thought? I can only imagine that they literally have nothing better to do. So instead of taking, I don't know, 5 minutes to actually remember and honor those that died on 9/11, they decide to take the selfish route, make this all about them, and usually come up with some half-baked crackhead ass theories because they never encompass the entire big picture of what happened on 9/11. Now, I'm not here to prove that 9/11 was or wasn't an inside job. I'm not here to give my expert opinion, as I'm not an engineering expert. I'm not an expert on the structure of metal and how those things would be affected, just to give some actual intelligent discussion here. Now, we all know that there was several buildings that fell that day, as well as a plane in Pennsylvania. You know, the World Trade Center towers both fell. Most of us remember that. Most of the people on my page were old enough to watch that on the news that day. I was 14 when the towers fell. Building 7 fell, and of course the Pentagon was hit. Now, I'm not going to debate too much on Building 7 nor the Pentagon, but the big one I want to focus on is the trade towers, because that's where most of the really dumbass theories come from. Now, what do I mean by dumbass theories? I'm going to cover a few of my favorite ones here. Usually misrepresented facts. Now, what do I mean by misrepresented facts? First and biggest one. I always hear people say that the towers shouldn't have fell because the trade towers were built to withstand a plane impact. They were. You can pretty much Google that at your will, and it'll tell you they were. A couple small details with that fact. One, the planes that hit the trade towers were a lot fucking bigger than anything the designers could have possibly imagined hitting them. They were physically bigger. Let's compare this to your car. Your car may have a 5-star crash safety rating, which means, in theory, you should come out pretty well from getting hit in that car. You know, I take my Silverado 1500 and I smash the ass end of you because I'm playing on my phone and fucking Googling midget porn, and I slam you in the rear end. You should, for the most part, be alright. Airbags should deploy, your seatbelt should grab you, all that good shit. So, still a chance you could die, but you've got a 5-star crash safety rating, so you should be good. Now, let's take that same car and put it in front of a fucking freight train. Still got a 5-star crash safety rating. Do you think you'll survive as well? Probably not. Why? Because your car was designed and tested to be hit by another passenger vehicle, not a fucking train. But most importantly, to cover on that detail, the towers did not fall at the point of impact. I don't know if any of you actually paid any fucking attention to the news and the, 10 million videos of it from that day. But the planes didn't topple over the towers did not topple over when the planes hit them. They actually withstood the impact. Actually proving that they upheld to the theory that they would. Understand that was just a theory. Nobody had ever dealt with an impact to the magnitude that the trade towers were built to withstand. Nobody imagined that somebody would take a fucking jumbo jet and intentionally and willfully fly it into the trade towers. They knew they may be hit. Yeah, that's possible. Probably figured they'd be hit by a much, much smaller plane, such as a Cessna. You know, a little 4-passenger, 8-passenger plane. Maybe a private jet. I don't think anybody in their wildest dreams imagined some fucking whack job would intentionally aim a Boeing 747 and full throttle into it. That's just not logic. But that's exactly what happened. And the buildings withstood the impact, which is pretty fucking impressive if you ask me. So, you're misrepresenting it by saying that the towers fell simply because the planes hit. They didn't. Anybody with common sense who watched the news at all 15 years ago would be able to verify that for you. But those are just pesky facts, and conspiracy theorists can't have that theory. Now, many people point out that several other buildings have burnt much longer than the trade towers did and didn't fall. This is true. What I seem to miss in most of those arguments is 90% of those buildings weren't hit by jumbo jets. I actually was sent a link to one story a couple years back of a plane that did hit a tower, or a large skyscraper I should say, and burnt for several hours and did not fall. Okay. It was not hit by a plane of the same magnitude. Not even close. It was hit by a plane like a tenth of the fucking size. So going back to my train theory, you're comparing a building that was hit by a Ford Festiva or a Geo Metro to one hit by a fucking train. Not really the same comparison. Also, the plane was not at full throttle. It was not a direct impact, as the pilot tried to avoid it. So you're seriously comparing getting hit by a Geo Metro that swerved to avoid you compared to fucking going headfirst with a train. Two very different scenarios, which would result in two very different outcomes, naturally. So let's go ahead and quit with the bullshit here, people, and pretend like these other buildings were anywhere close to the same. They weren't. They weren't as tall. They weren't hit by the same amount of force. There wasn't the same physics at play. So seriously, find me a plane that's been hit by something in the magnitude of a 747 at wide open throttle, and we can talk that one. By all means, post a link in the comments. I'll read it. We can discuss it. I'm not above an intelligent discussion, okay? Because the fact of the matter, I wasn't there. Nobody that I know on my page was there at the towers when they were hit and when they fell. Actually, most of the people that were at the towers when they fell died. So we can't really ask them. But we can look over the several 100,000 videos and the millions of eyewitness statements and take it for what it is. Now, the second thing, and my favorite theory, probably my favorite one that you dumbasses force on focusing on. Jet fuel cannot melt structural steel. Yes, you're right. You know what else can't melt steel? Car gas. Good old automotive pump fuel. 98 octane, race fuel, which is pretty much fucking jet fuel. Some guys actually run aeronautical fuel. Cannot melt steel. You've said this many, many times. So I need you to riddle me this. How come pump gas can make car headers glow molten red? That doesn't happen. You've said that. I've seen car headers glowing fucking red. This is before they got hit with a plane. Okay, so according to you, the towers couldn't have failed because jet fuel does not melt structural steel. Now, let's use my car theory here. That, in fact, car gas, automotive pump fuel, you know, that good shit from 98 octane. I don't run that shit, I'm poor. I run the cheap stuff. But it'll still actually make car headers glow red, which are steel. Now, I want you to get them headers glowing good and red, which I can tell you exactly how to do that, but I do have to warn you, you may fuck your car up. And now I want you to take a 10-pound sledgehammer and hit them motherfuckers as hard as you can. I mean, draw back and get them motherfuckers. Do you think this could cause a structural failure in your car headers? Well, according to you, it should be just fine to do, because it won't melt them. I'm willing to bet 10-1 that fucks your headers up. Slight chance it'll probably fuck your motor up. But don't worry, your car will be safe because fuel doesn't melt steel. I've also seen pump gas and jet fuel, basically, race fuel, melt. Literally melt. Disfigure, warp, and straight fuck up pistons. Now, how can that be? Because, again, it's not physically possible. Google it. Car fuel will not melt steel. So what causes this then? Must be the government. Goddamn Bush is at it again. He's fucking up my headers. He's sending the entire CIA team and intentionally deformed my header so it would appear that the fuel melted my pistons. Or we could actually look at the big picture, factor in several details, not just how hot fuel burns, but say how hot oxygen burns. What happens when you've got a tremendous amount of pressure built in? Some of these fucking race cars are running 13-to-1 compression. It's a lot of fucking power in there, boys. You add in other variables of what other contaminants could be in there. You could factor in minor variables like maybe the pistons weren't brand new. And that may actually have some effect on what's going on here. Look at the big picture. It's perfectly possible that car gas actually will melt pistons, which are very strong steel. Fuck up intakes, warp headers, crack headers, all kinds of stuff. Alright, so when you look at the one detail, and only the one detail of how hot the fuel burns, you're right, it's not physically possible. Now, let's pretend for just a second that 9/11, when it was hit by the planes, had, I don't know, this weird shit called oxygen around it. Will that cause a change in it? Oxygen burns hotter than jet fuel. Let's factor in that just maybe of the several hundreds and hundreds of offices there, somebody may have actually been using cleaning chemicals. Some of those are flammable. Wonder how hot they burn. Wonder how hot they burn when you mix them with shit like jet fuel and other chemicals. And I'm guessing half of them people, at least some of them people, probably had alcohol in their office. So that would burn. And then of course the oxygen. And oh yeah, let's not factor in the fact that it didn't have to melt the steel beams. That's a misconception. Because see, when metal gets really fucking hot, it gets weak. There's actually a really cool guy on YouTube that proved this theory. He took structural grade steel, showed that he couldn't bend it by hand, wiggled it around, didn't really do much damage. Heated it up with a blacksmith kiln, which I'm guessing doesn't get nearly as fucking hot as jet fuel, but that is honestly just a theory because it would depend on a lot of other variables. I don't know. And he bent it with relative ease. How the fuck is that even possible? It didn't melt the steel. Well, see, when steel gets weak, it starts to bend and buckle. Now, let's factor in a few things to the now weakened steel. Not melted steel, but weakened steel. That would have been glowing red hot and pretty much fucking molten. Not quite melted, but probably pretty close. What's jet fuel burn at, like 1300 degrees or some shit? Now, you add in a several 100-ton plane setting on that, and then you factor in the overall weight of the build of the structure above the plane. You have a lot of fucking weight on weak metal. Not melted metal, but on weak metal. Now, I know somebody's going to actually comment that they would have anticipated when the plane hit the towers that there would have been a fire. Alrighty. Well, on top of not having a plane that big, they would not have had the same jet fuel back then. Did you know that one? Jet fuel is actually very different than it was back when the towers were built. So they wouldn't have factored in how hot it burnt. And of course the structure was actually built to withstand a fire for several hours, which would have weakened the steel. Okay, that steel was actually designed. They used that particular steel because of fires. Now, let's factor in a major detail. A fucking plane hit it! Okay, that's not open for debate. You can say that there was a controlled demolition afterwards. You can say that they used special paint on the beams in the basement. Blah, blah, blah. Plane still hit the building. That seriously fucked up the structure, okay? Let me put this in a much smaller comparison for you, alright? Most of the people on my friends list could probably hold me on their shoulders. If I climbed up on their shoulders, they could probably hold me, okay? Now, let's put me about 10 feet above their head, jump on their shoulders, and kick them in the fucking ribs as hard as I can in steel-toe boots on my way down. Do you think that would change the factors and change the variables enough to make them not be able to withstand my weight? I'm guessing, yeah. But if you want to put it to a theory, fuck, I'm game. I got a couple trees, second story window. Shit, I'll jump off the back of my truck to do it. My guess is most of my friends on my page, and I've got some pretty good sized boys on my page, a couple pretty good sized gals too. I'm willing to bet if I hauled off and kicked them in the ribs and then dove on their shoulders at 180 pounds, they would probably fall. Now, so when you factor that metaphor in, and you factor in all these details, that the structure of the building was compromised drastically when the planes ripped through the steel, weakening the structure, and then you heat it up to stupid high fucking temperatures, and then you factor in all the other flammable shit, the planes didn't need to melt the steel beams, okay? They weakened them. You add in the weight of the plane, you add in the weight of the rest of the structure, and it starts to collapse from the top. The building was designed to hold that much weight, not to catch it. Not at all. Trade towers were not built to catch a top weight coming down. So had the structure started to collapse from the top, which would make sense because the planes didn't hit the very fucking bottom of it, the floors above it would have started to fall down, causing a chain reaction. Now, one of my favorite theories about this, and what proves me wrong apparently, is that there is rumors that the parking garage on the bottom of the structure was painted just prior to this, and that there was trace amounts of chemicals similar to what you'd find in a sparkler in that paint, which that combination together may or may not melt steel. Now, people tell me my theory is wrong about the collapse from the top happening, which is pretty much what everybody's seen on the news, because the building was designed to withstand that weight. But we'll make the same argument that I'm making, saying that because they burnt the steel at the bottom would have caused the exact same collapse. So if we're saying the same thing, that the building collapsed because of the dropping of the weight, why does your theory make more sense than mine? Again, they're just theories. You see, I love when people take these minor details, like finding chemicals similar to sparklers and what you find in road flares and various other high heat sources, and base their entire argument off of that. How many people on my page eat store-bought bread? Do you know they actually use some of the same chemicals that they use in shoe rubber? So you're telling me that your bread is actually shoe rubber. For the love of God, I hope it's not the bottom of my shoes, because them motherfuckers stinking have been through everything. Bananas share something like 98% of their DNA with humans. Is a banana a human? Well, it has to be. There are similar chemical properties there. Look, we share most of our DNA with monkeys. Folks, you can't take one minor detail out of an entire situation and base your entire argument on that. You have to factor in the big picture. Now, my theories prove 9/11 wasn't an inside job? Absolutely not. Fuck, they could have had an Air Force pilot flying them planes for all I know. Doesn't change the fact that it wasn't a controlled demolition. Study controlled demolitions, people. You can. I have. I wanted to be a demolition expert. I also wanted to be explosive ordnance disposal in the United States Marine Corps. So I understand a little bit on the basics of controlled demolition. One of the big things you have to factor in, especially when dropping a building of that magnitude. Okay, damn thing was what, 110 stories tall? Be a hell of a demolition. First off, they wouldn't have blown the building up simply from the bottom. It would have blown up in stages, all the way up it. That's what would have caused it not to topple over. Okay, they would have blown the top, then down, then down, then down, then down. And they would have actually blown it in a very controlled sequence. Not one explosion from the bottom. Now, I know somebody's going to point out that there appears to be a minor explosion up a little bit higher. One explosion off of one side of the building, not all four. Wouldn't that have made the building topple? I mean, I don't know if you've ever cut down a tree, but you cut a big ass V in the side of it, then you cut the other side, and it leans to the V. So if they'd have made one explosion on one side of the building, it would have leaned. Sorry, people. That's physics and science. I know y'all don't believe in that shit. It's the devil and, un-Jesus-like and fuck the government. But it is science and it is proven fact. So, top of that, you'd have had to find somebody that was willing to wire the trade towers to blow. Let's think about this for a second, people. Nobody has come forward admitting they did that. No one. Let's say somebody thought they were doing a controlled demolition and that the towers were going to be empty, and then they see, holy shit, the towers fell. Man, I wonder if that's what they had me wire it for. I'd have ran to the motherfucking news. I would have been down at ground zero telling everybody with a motherfucking camera that so-and-so paid me to wire that building to fall. Okay? Now, the other big thing with controlled demolitions, and again, you people seem to miss the fact that a fucking plane hit these buildings a lot. I don't understand why y'all missed that major detail of this issue. But on a controlled demolition, paying attention to the weight is very important. Those planes weigh a lot, a couple hundred tons. Okay, so they'd have had to factor in that plane hitting. They would have had to factor in exactly where that plane hit to make sure to make charges to offset that weight and make it lean away from that weight to keep it actually standing upright. Okay, counterbalance is what I'm looking for here for those of you that couldn't figure that out. On top of that, you'd have had to have an engineer go in and look at them beams that were split. You can't guesstimate on a controlled demolition. Guesstimates make it fall to the side. Now, here's the one question I have for all you, a couple questions I have for all you extremely intelligent people who have done your thorough Google research without having a fucking clue of what you're talking about. First off, okay, if you wanted to do an inside job, okay, riddle me this. Let's say it was an inside job. Why not make the buildings fall over sideways? You'd have killed a lot more people. You'd have caused a lot more damage and devastation. You'd have caused that much more outrage. I mean, fuck, you're willing to kill a couple thousand people. What's a few hundred more if they fall over sideways? I'm waiting. Yeah, I probably won't get a response to that one. If I was going to schedule a terrorist attack and I was going to drop two big ass buildings, I'd have knocked them motherfuckers sideways. I'd have taken out as many people as I wanted to. Which actually explains more of why somebody would have flown the planes higher than lower. You know, since we're only factoring in one detail and not the overall big picture, I would have hit high with the planes too, and in hopes to knock them over. So, with all this government conspiracy, why didn't they send the building sideways? I would have. If I was going to demo that building and use a plane to cover it up, I would have made sure to plan which side of the buildings I hit, and I'd have rigged enough explosives on that side of the basement and probably the first 15, 20 levels to knock that motherfucker over sideways quicker than shit. Killing thousands more people, maybe. Really getting Americans pissed off and ready to go to war. Okay, now, my next theory. A lot of my friends believe the government is incompetent morons. I'm willing to bet I could get more than one person to say Bush was a fucking retard even. Let's face it. I like Bush. I'm not ashamed of it. Bush loved his country. Bush was a true American. Now, Bush was not the smartest man we have ever had on the face of the earth run this country. Okay? He wasn't. Good man, not that bright. So you're telling me that this man managed to help orchestrate, organize, and pull off one of the world's largest terrorist attacks, kill several thousand people, convince not only the U.S., but the entire fucking planet that Johnny Jihad did it. Okay, so pick one. He's either a fucking moron or he's a genius. Because it'd take a serious fucking psychotic mastermind to pull that off. And all hopes that the rest of the world didn't figure out one minor detail to prove he did it. Folks, we've been at war for 15 fucking years. You don't think these other countries haven't looked into this shit? You don't think they haven't had their engineers and their experts and their scientists checking this to make sure? I can't buy that. I'm sorry. I'm not going to. You can refer to all the thousands of engineers that prove it was an inside job. They're working on theories too. And for every one of them, there's at least one engineer that says it's perfectly plausible what happened. Alright? So, that's my theory. Now, I know some of y'all are going to say, well, it was the CIA and it was this agency and blah, blah, blah. Not a single person has come forward admitting that they were part of an inside job on 9/11. Not a single contractor has came through and said they painted chemicals into it. Not a single contractor has came in and said they rigged that building to blow. None of our enemies have stood up and boasted and banged on their chest that they took out thousands of Americans. Wouldn't you? If I hate somebody that bad and I finally get a chance to get my hands on them, I'm going to let the motherfucking world know I stomped a mud hole in their ass. Plain and simple. Nobody has came forward and said, hey, we did this. This was us. No contractors. No enemies. Nobody besides be accused. I find that kind of odd. Again, a lot of places hate us. A lot of people hate this country. I, for one, love it. I hate my government. I think they're fucking retards, but I love my country. But if I could find out how to take all the terrorists out, or at least send them running scared, and make them change their tactics, and I pulled it off, you goddamn right I'd be bragging about it. If I could find out a way to stop North Korea, I'd make sure every fucking news channel in the world see my face. I'd be bragging about it. Nobody has about 9/11. Why is that? Why hasn't anybody came forward and said that they were part of the inside job? Why hasn't anybody came forward and admitted that they did it, even if they didn't know they were doing it? Again, maybe they had a painter come in and do that. When the theories started surfacing that there was chemicals mixed in with the paint, why didn't them contractors come forward? If it was a controlled demolition, who do you think did it? Motherfucking Jose from Mexico? That shit is an exact science. Nobody's came forward and admitted it. Why not? I mean, nobody's came forward to clean their conscience about it. Nobody's came forward to take credit for it. Nothing. Now I know what you're going to say. The government killed a man. They had him do the job, then they took him out back and they shot a man. That's actually not completely below our government, so I'll kind of give you that theory. They didn't tell anybody either. This fucking controlled demolition expert didn't brag to his friends and family that he just got probably a several billion-dollar fucking contract. Nobody. Didn't tell a fucking soul. You're fucking stupid, ain't you, if you believe that? Guys, come on. You can't focus on one minor detail. You can't focus on one small speck of the picture and expect to understand the whole picture. Okay? That's just fact. Sorry, you don't have to like it, but it is what it is. Now, does by any means any of this prove it wasn't an inside job? No. The planes could have been flown by Americans. The planes could have been contracted by our own government. This is absolutely true. God, I hope it's not, but it could be. And many people believe it was. Now, here's my theory. And this is the one time I'll actually say my theory that actually contradicts most of y'all. And it's just my opinion and nothing more. I'm not going to use facts for it. My theory, we knew 9/11 was going to happen. We didn't believe it. Guys, this is only the third attack that has ever been rendered against the Americans on American soil. Y'all probably don't even realize the one. Of course, we know about Pearl Harbor. A lot of damn good men died that day. We went to war that day. Of course, we all remember 9/11. That's why I'm making a fucking video. A lot of good men and women died that day. We went to war that day. Did you actually know a Japanese pilot actually managed to drop a bomb on continental U.S. soil? Yeah. One's not advertised much, but look it up. It's there. He's the only actual enemy soldier to actually manage to get a direct hit on U.S. soil. As fucked up as it is that we were attacked, it's actually a pretty cool story. They found the pilot, brought him back years later. Real cool story there. Look it up. So this is only the third time we've ever been attacked on U.S. soil, folks. By our own. Other than by our own, I mean. Nobody would have believed it. Had you told me 20 minutes before them planes hit that we were going to be attacked on U.S. soil, I wouldn't have believed you. I'd have told you were nuts. Nobody fucks with the U.S. Somebody did. Alright? So I think our government knew about it. I think the reports were there. I think the concerns were there that something didn't set right. I don't think anybody actually anticipated it going down. Alright? Now, on the off chance that it did work, I think the government may have had something to do with Building 7. Not real sure. Never actually understood why that building fell. Not even going to pretend like I do. The only possible theory would be an underlying gas rupture, but that would have dropped several buildings in between as well. The Pentagon. I don't believe that one was done by a plane. It doesn't make sense to me. Big picture, it just doesn't make sense. I've flown planes. I have. Many of you might find that hard to believe, but I actually have. I flew a little Cessna back when I was a kid. Damn, I got my pilot's license. Wish I would have. Okay, so there's no doubt in my mind that there is some shit that doesn't match the official reports. I'm not stupid. But many of you are, because you refuse to look at all the facts, weigh in all the factors. Okay, so do I think 9/11 was done pretty much how they said it was for the towers? Yeah, I truly do. Do I think the government knew about it? Yeah, sadly I do. I just don't think they took it as a serious threat, as a viable threat. Do I think they set up a plan B just in case? Hell of a way to destroy a lot of evidence for a lot of ongoing cases, like a shit ton of money missing, by blowing up the Pentagon. Notice nobody died in the Pentagon. That's why I think it may have been the government. They didn't kill anybody. Had the plane missed the first wall and flown across, they'd have taken out our entire chain of command. All of the top dogs were one wall over. They'd have jumped, missed the first wall, slammed the second wall, they'd have taken out the entire fucking Joint Chiefs of Staff, as well as several other high-ranking officials. Building 7, as I recall, was evacuated prior to its collapse. That seems kind of fishy to me. That would back up the Pentagon theory that the government did have some shit going on. Okay? But honestly, at the end of the day, I'm going to stand true and I'm going to stand proud to my country. My country was attacked by somebody. A few short years later, I ran off and joined the United States Marine Corps. Swore I'd get them sons of a bitches that attacked us that day. And that day shaped my life. So while you're spewing off all these conspiracy theories, you're not a fucking expert. Don't play like you are one. You were too much of a coward back then to stand up and unite with your country and stand against an enemy. I understand. It's scary actually getting off of the keyboard and fighting. But if you do nothing else for 9/11, do the rest of the world one favor. Shut up about the conspiracy theories for one day. Because regardless if you think Bush or the CIA or Al-Qaeda or ISIS or the Russians or the Canadians or motherfucking Jose Cuervo from Mexico blew up them towers, it does not change that a lot of damn good men died that day. A lot of damn good women died that day. A lot of innocent people were murdered that day.